Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Compulsive Comics, a 2018 collection of Eric Haven's various and sundry stories from various previous publications. Eric Haven came to prominence, I think around in the teens, and he had a small comic called Tales to Demolish. I have one issue. I think there was 3 issues. I have number 3, and most of this is reprinted in the book. And this was published by Sparkplug Comics, a very small publisher, and but pretty soon people noticed his stuff, and pretty soon Buenaventura Press was publishing his stuff. Here's the Aviatrix number 1. There was never a number 2 or 3, or any of them. Most of this, in fact, almost all of this is reprinted inside the book, except for these 2 wonderful covers of the Aviatrix. And I'm thinking about getting rid of this since everything's reprinted in this collection. But these are really 2 really nice covers. So unless Archibald Gerdsbag wants it, I'll probably keep it. But I don't need to have it. I gotta get rid of some comics sometime. They're taking over my house. So this is a really fun collection. Eric Haven's got this amazing, absurdist, funny sense of humor. Very, very funny guy. And I love this cover. It just looks like a great, I don't know, if Marvel and DC were better, this would be a great superhero comic cover. And a nice little book. Little wraparound cover there. And it's got these weird end papers. It's not that weird, but interesting. And we start off with the title, 2-page spread. I think this is reprinted from some of his previous stuff. So we start off with the glacier. And it's basically talking about how, we were once covered by, North America was pretty much under a sheet of ice more than a mile thick during the Ice Age. And human civilization sprung up after the last one. Will it survive the next? And we start the story. This is his earliest work. I'm pretty sure this is from number 1 of Tales to Demolish. And it looks like he's way more into putting in detail like this. Look at this sky. Just this crazy, almost checkerboard pattern. And the narrator of this tale is a glaciologist. I don't even know if that's a real term. I imagine there must be guys who study glaciers, and they'd be called glaciologists. So he's looking at this glacier, talking about nerdy glacier talk, science talk, and he's basically all alone out here in the Arctic, observing glaciers. This is kind of very different from a lot of Eric Haven's stuff. His early stuff is, just not as silly. And I mean that in a good way, silly. His stuff is very funny and silly. And this he's very slow build up in this story. I still don't find this art as appealing as he got. It's not bad, but all of a sudden there's an earthquake. And he almost falls through. Basically all the glacier collapses. And luckily there's a small bridge across this huge basically canyon that forms when the earthquake shatters all the ice. Luckily he grabs onto it, and when he looks down inside the glacier, I might crack the spine here. This almost Lovecraftian elder god, this crazy looking guy. And the thing wakes up. Kind of a very scary character. It's actually kind of frightening. And so the guy starts running. This creature's chasing him. really like this page here where we see the scale of how big this guy is. And our main character here is like running off the panel. I don't know why I find this very interesting. So he grabs the guy in his hand. And he says, I awoke too soon. You're not quite ready. So I guess these guys 8 billion years ago, this alien creature seeded planet Earth. But he realizes that the crop is still too tiny to harvest. So he's going to sleep 3 more million years. Perhaps then you will have evolved. You will have evolved. Then you'll be ready to eat. And he drops off the guy. And the guy's just left alone. Basically thinking, what the fuck was that? I like how this alien who's smart enough to seed a planet with life doesn't realize that humans aren't going to evolve and get any bigger. They're probably going to get smaller. Because we don't need strength as much to survive. I love this story, God. It's almost like a twisted autobiography comic. I killed Dan Klaus. So one day, I think this is supposed to be Eric Haven and his girlfriend, like in real life. Eric Haven puts himself in a lot of the stories. I'm assuming it's him. Then nobody ever calls him Eric, but I'm pretty sure he's like this guy. And one day he's driving in Oakland and he's chatting with his girlfriend and he's not paying attention and he runs over someone. And when he goes to check on the body, he says, "Oh my God, he looks kind of familiar." It's like, "Oh my God, I killed Dan Klaus." It's Dan Klaus. And he's like, "What should I do?" He's all panicking. And his girlfriend's like, "We should call the police." And he's like, "No, I don't want to go to prison." Meanwhile, Dan Klaus' spirit rises from his dead body, floats into the sky, and he heads towards this light. His spirit is drawn to the light. Later, we cut back to Earth. Eric Haven has just buried Dan Klaus in an unmarked grave. And the girlfriend's like, "I still think we should have reported that." And he's like, "Nobody saw us. Let's just keep our mouths shut. We'll be fine." And then as he pulls out, the girlfriend's like, "Look out!" And it's someone else. And he's like, "Oh no, not again." And he's like, "Wait a second. Oh, I recognize this person. It's Adrian Tomine." This is so ridiculous. This is just so silly that this indie cartoonist would draw this comic, write and draw this comic about killing other indie cartoonists. So once again, Eric Haven is just like, "We got to get rid of the body." Adrian Tomine's spectral form rises into the air, just like Dan Klaus, and heads towards the light. So now, when he gets into the light, he's in this afterworld, afterlife. He says, "Hey, is that a person up ahead?" And he's like, "Dan." Because those guys are pals. They know each other, right? So, and he's like, "Adrian." I like how Dan Klaus always calls him lad. "It's great to see you, lad." I wonder in real life if he does that. And Dan Klaus says, "I think we're dead." And they both share notes, and they're like, "Yeah, the last thing I remember is being hit by a black VW bug." And Adrian Tomine's like, "Man, I'd like to get the hands of the guy who ran us down. I'll fucking throttle him." And then all of a sudden they feel the ground shaking. And this amazing, speaking of Lovecraft, what a crazy looking creature pops up. But it's not a crazy creature, it's God. This is what God looks like. I like these little tiny lines. Kind of reminds me of manga. And Dan Klaus asks God, he says, "Is it possible to go back among the living for the purpose of vengeance?" Oh, I skipped a page. And God says, "I haven't done that in a while." I like this how it says, such a nerdy little thing. There's a little note. "See More Fun Comics, number 52, 1940. That's the first appearance of the Spectre, I believe. I think that's what that's a reference to. So he says, I suppose it's good to be wrathful from time to time. And I love this how God says, Dan, I'm a big fan of your gynecology novella, 8-ball number 17, a little note. And he says, and Adrian, your comics are really good. Though I am more fond of your earlier, funnier work. Which is funny, because I think that's, if I get the joke correctly, Adrian Tomine wasn't funny when he started. When he was a little kid, teenager, he was drawing these like serious Raymond Carver-like short stories. So then he says, because I enjoyed your comics so much, I will grant your request. But you have to wear these costumes. So he sends them back to Earth. Meanwhile, back on Earth, we see, this time, Eric Haven's not even burying Tomine. He just throws him into a lake. And his girlfriend is basically like on the phone saying like, I need a place to sleep tonight. I have to go. I'm staying at my sister's. And he's like, what? And she's like, you keep going around killing people. Killing is wrong. And then, of course, he's like, it was just an accident, babe. I don't want to go to prison. And then Klaus and Tomine show up. Dynamic duo. And they beat the shit out of him. But first, Tomine grabs, gets the girlfriend to safety. And Klaus starts pounding on him. I'm so curious to see what Dan Klaus and Adrian Tomine thought of this comic when they read it. And it seems like Tomine and the girlfriend start kind of flirting with each other. This little connection. And Klaus is like, Tomine, if you want some of this action, you better hurry. If you want some of this revenge. So Tomine goes up to him and just snaps his neck and kills him. And then they fly off with the girlfriend in tow. It says apologies to Dan Klaus and Adrian Tomine. Oh my God. That is just funny stuff. I like this one, Memology. I really like when he uses color. It's almost like he doesn't feel the need to do all that noodly cross-hatching as much. Because the color will take care of it. So we see back in prehistoric times there, this dinosaur attacking this cute little critter, some mammal. And he runs up a tree to escape. And when night comes and the dinosaurs walked away, he digs up some of these dinosaur eggs and starts sucking out the yolks. Now we cut away to 65 million years later. And it looks like Eric Haven again, maybe. Or at least his everyman character. And he's cooking up breakfast. And he sits down in front of the TV to watch something. And we see this reptilian guy. And then, I don't know why I thought this was interesting, how he spends all these panels just showing exactly how he makes his breakfast sandwich. And it's eerily similar to the way I do it. Like, I do the exact same thing. I always put hot sauce, black pepper, some cheese, and an egg. I know that's dumb, but I don't know, there's like 8 panels devoted to him making a sandwich. So now I think we see what he's watching on TV. It says, meanwhile, on a tiny hunk of rock in the Pacific Ocean. And we see these two, sci-fi characters. And the guy's like, Beth, we have to get off this island. There could be a volcano at any moment. And she says, oh, come on, don't be a scaredy cat. It's our job as volcanologists. I guess that's like a glaciologist. It's our job to collect as much data as we can. And he says, fine, I'm going back to the boat. But before he can make it, his boots melt to the ground and a fissure opens up and incinerates him. So this woman's all like, oh shit, he was right. Fissures everywhere. She gets hit by one, but not fatally. And she's on fire, so she stops, drops, and rolls. And basically it burns off her suit, so she's just left with a little remnant of clothing. And meanwhile, we see this superhero And we hear his narration. It's very like, Marvel Comics. And his name's the Mongoose. And I forgot to mention that out of the fissure comes this reptilian creature. And it's menacing this woman. And then we see some fun action superhero splash pages. And if you remember, this was the cover of Tales to Demolish #3. That's not in the original comic. He just shoved that in. And we get some fun superhero action. The mongoose is kicking his ass. The reptilian says, "Is that the best you can do, mammal?" And the mongoose slams his fist through his skull. Once again, he uses those force lines. I gotta say, like, I still love, like, a handful of superhero stuff. This is like a pretty cool looking superhero. That's a pretty cool superhero outfit. Even though Rick Haven's just making fun of superheroes. And the woman says, "Who are you? Are you some kind of pervert?" Because his legs are all furry since he's the mongoose. And he basically thinks to himself, like, she could never understand. An ancient secret war has been waged between mammals and reptiles. I love this. He totally just like lifts a Devil Dinosaur panel by Jack Kirby. So basically, he says, through time immemorial, mammalian champions have arisen to strike back at the reptilian threat. I'm pretty sure this is Beowulf here. That's supposed to be Beowulf. And maybe this is Hercules? I don't know. So he's just a long line. He's in a long line of warriors who fought the reptilians. He realizes she'd never believe him, so he has to hypnotize her. And he drops her off from this boat. And he flies away. And as the camera pulls out, Eric Haven's still watching this movie. And he says, "What's a pervert?" So here we got the gunslinger. This is such a dumb gag, but I fucking think it's so brilliant. Because there's that term gunslinger, which is like, what does that really mean? They don't sling a gun. They just pull it out of their holster and shoot. So he makes this character who basically throws his guns, that's his weapon, like a little boomerang. And we see him riding through the Old West. And a rattler is threatening him. And he does this very dramatic move with his body and throws the gun. There's those lines again. And decapitates the snake, and it returns to his hand. Stay tuned for more thrilling adventures with the gunslinger. I'd read this every month if it was a comic. It's very golden age feel to his like superhero adventure comic pastiches. It just on the back cover, one of the blurbs kind of says he's kind of like Fletcher Hanks. I think Fletcher Hanks is even more disturbing than him, but yeah, it's a pretty good call. Here we have a day at the zoo, and we see, I'm going to say Eric Haven again, and he says that he's quoting from the little blur, the thing at a zoo that tells you about the animal, the little plaque. He says, according to this, the giant anteater can eat 40,000 ants a day. That's a lot of ants, you fat fuck. He calls the anteater. He starts insulting him. The anteater comes out, sticks his proboscis right into his forehead and sucks out his brain. Slurp, slurp, slurp. That's such a weird, fucking great comic. Here's Protona. And we see this Eric Haven character again. He's on a date with this tiny little woman, Protona. And he apparently has some kind of gastric problem where he really has to shit. And he has to puke. I guess he drank too much. So Protona knocks on the bathroom door. She's like, "You okay in there?" And he's puking and shitting. And finally he comes out, and Protona is passed out on the floor. Passed out from his fumes. So he does CPR on her chest. And when she wakes up, she says, "The last thing I can remember is the horrifying stench." And then he just says, "Well, I have to get going. Sorry about everything." And then she says, "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" And he says, "It's okay. I'm wearing a tie." And then we go into the story. It's okay. I'm wearing a tie. Where we see this character driving his little black VW bug again. And a cop stops him. But he's like, "It's okay. I'm wearing a tie." But then when the cop comes, he assaults him and kicks his gun away and knocks him out. And he keeps yelling, "It's okay, I'm wearing a tie." The cop tries to shoot at him. He's like, "It's okay, I'm wearing a tie." He drives his car off the bridge. He swims out of the car. And he keeps saying, "It's okay, I'm wearing a tie." Even when a shark comes, who's eating him, "I'm wearing a tie." It's fucking nuts. I love this logo here, Confluence. So once again, we see this character. And he's looking at some, it almost looks like a Kirby-esque television. And we can see the art getting better and better in all these stories. And he's just putzing around his house. But he smokes some pot and drinks some beer, and then it looks like he's kind of fried. He's feeling no pain. And he decides to leave his house and walk around. And he sees this giant monster flying through the air. And all of a sudden, this plane comes out of nowhere, a biplane, and starts shooting at it. And it looks like the monster's going to step right on Eric's head. But at the last minute, the woman in the plane, the Aviatrix, grabs him and rescues him. So she says, "Hang on." And he says, "How are you going to defeat that thing?" And she's like, "I noticed something about this monster. His hide is impenetrable, but he doesn't blink." So she dives off the plane holding 2 hand grenades in each hand. And she basically dives right into his eye as if it's a pool. Splorch. And she swims basically through his, eye canal and deposits the 2 hand grenades within his skull. And it looks like she can't get out. She's like trapped in the mucus or whatever the fuck's in there. The viscera. The head viscera. And then all of a sudden, the hand grenades blow up and it basically expels her from the monster. And he's dead. And just luckily, she lands right in her plane, right on the wing. So now we see the secret origins of the Aviatrix. And I guess her parents were killed. These like huge birds carried off her parents. So she's orphaned. She's walking through the woods and she finds this old man in an aviator helmet. And he basically teaches her the ways of how to become an aviatrix. Teaches her how to rebuild a plane engine with her blindfold on. Tells her that basically there's all these threats in the sky. And eventually she's like, "I want to go home." So he says, "Why don't you say so?" So he takes her to the highway. She hitches a ride. And she gets adopted. Oh, I'm sorry. Her aunt and uncle take her in. She goes to the finest schools with the knowledge she knows from that old man in the woods. She becomes like this amazing plane engineer, plane mechanic. And she builds this amazing plane that's faster than any other airplane on Earth. And now she's ready to embark on her mission to defend America's skies from weird, terrifying menaces. Oh, I love this. These weird fucking creatures. Look at this giant hand. I don't know who that guy is. She only seems to operate in upstate New York. I don't know why I thought that was funny. And a representative from the United States government approaches her and says, "Have you ever thought of working for the U.S. military?" And she's like, "No." And, he's touching her plane. She's like, "Hands off." And she's just totally not interested. And he says, "Well, you understand, if you don't help us, we'll be forced to consider you an enemy of the Republic." And she kicks him in the nuts and puts a gun in his mouth and says, "Don't fuck with me," basically. I love this. "Anyone who thinks he can take my plane can suck my dick. I don't have time to fight America's wars. I'm too busy fighting my own." So from that day forward, she's hunted by the U.S. Army Air Service. And they developed this amazing, laser beam to take her out. And I guess they zap her, and it says, "Not a single atom of evidence was left," as if she never existed at all. So I guess that's the future when the death of Aviatrix was. Now we're back to the story. And she says, "I should take you home." He thanks her for saving his life. She says, "You're welcome." And the whole time he's thinking, ask for a number. And then he realizes he's got to take a really bad shit, and he's rushing to make it to the toilet. We've all been there. I love this, how you can see the turd coming out of his butt as he's sitting down. I've definitely been there, where I just made it. And this is so weird. We see the Aviatrix on her, magic television screen, watching him take his shit while she's flying her airplane. And then she just flies off. Oh, that's so odd. This looks like it's going back to an earlier issue. It looks like the art has regressed back to maybe the first Tales to Demolish or the second one. Look at all that hatching and stuff. It's crazy. It almost looks like it's furry, this page. So I forgot to mention this. So this is the title here? I might have missed a page. Yep, I did. This is called The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare, G.K. Chesterton. So, actually, I heard about this book. Sparkplug Comics was planning on adapting a G.K. Chesterton book. I assumed it was in the public domain. I don't think he could have afforded to buy the rights. And he got all these different great indie cartoonists to draw a chapter. And, like Chris Cajero Cilla, and actually I can't think of anyone else. But they were all pretty good cartoonists, or great cartoonists. But I guess it was completed, but for some reason it was never put out. And I don't know if it was around the time of Dylan Williams' death. He was the founder and owner of Sparkplug Comics. I don't know why it didn't come out, but it could have been because of that. He died very young, unfortunately. And so this is his chapter, which is the final chapter in the book. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's very odd. And it seems like over the years, I know that Chris Cajero Cilla put out his chapter in a fanzine. And so it's just kind of sad that nobody ever just called these artists up and said, "Hey, let's do this. Let's collect this book and put it out for reals." So it's very bizarre. I've never read G.K. Chesterton, so I don't know if all of his stuff is like this. But it's very surreal, very odd. So back to this page. And we see all these guys gathering. They're kind of like mystic guys, Doctor Strange types, it seems. And in the middle is this one humongous guy. He's like the Kingpin. And just his speech is very odd. Just I don't know if reading the book would make this more understandable, reading the whole thing. But it's very, like, weird what he's saying, like, very cryptic. I guess this guy's name is Thursday, so he's the man called Thursday. They all have names, named of days of the week. It's very strange. It was kind of interesting to read just because it's so bizarre. Like, I just had no idea what the hell was going to happen. So when this guy shows up, this long hair guy named Gregory. And he's an anarchist. One of the, whatever these guys, he basically thinks he's Satan. And this guy's just like, you're right, I'm a destroyer. I would destroy the world if I could. And he does this weird speech about how, like, an anarchist speech, basically. I guess it's not that weird. It's like, the problem with governments isn't the evil that they do. It's just the fact that they govern. The unpardonable sin of the supreme power is that it's supreme. I don't curse you for being cruel. I just curse you for being safe. And he claims that they've never suffered. And, Thursday basically counters his argument. It's like, who are you to say we haven't suffered? It's almost like some weird, like, Samuel Beckett play. Like what the fuck are they talking about? It's very odd. It's basically like you could tell the author's just putting ideas into these characters' mouths. They're like ciphers. And Thursday confronts that big kingpin guy. He says, have you ever suffered? And it seems like he gets even bigger. He says, can ye drink of the cup that I drink of? To Thursday. And then we cut away, and it looks like Thursday's hanging out with that anarchist dude, Gregory. And they're just walking around. Man, look at this, like, amount of detail. That's some, looks kind of nice. They see this woman in a yard, and it says the end. So even, like, not reading the rest of the book, I can't even imagine how this could be the ending of any book. It's such an odd ending. Man, it's really nice looking at these panels. And then we have this little, these vignettes. Kind of remind me of, like, in a strange way, they remind me of Charles Burns, even though the style is very different. Not so different. That turtle could be a Charles Burns turtle. But Charles Burns would never do that kind of crazy cross-hatching. He'd just have beautiful, solid black ink. Wow, look at this. I wonder if these are like, almost like zip-a-tone type thing, like a screen. Or if he just drew every single one of these. I think he did. I like that alien. And so now we have the comic, The Highway. And I think Eric even does this a lot, where you almost think it's a new story, but I guess this is just the weird intro to The Highway. Because we see this guy in the car. And now I love this whole, almost like EC Comics intro with the cool logo. We are all travelers on the expressway of time. Reality's unrelenting tarmac whisks us along on a one-way trip from the day we're born to the day we die. And we see this guy driving around. He says, this way lies madness. And then, I think this is the same guy. We see him asleep in front of the TV. And I assume he's dreaming here. He says, an alien crucified on a cross. Such really interesting. Totally reminds me of like classic underground comic art. Like he could be hanging out with Jim Osborne and Charles Dallas. Man, such amazing textures. This guy's just walking around. This one's a head scratcher. But I don't mind. Was he even sitting in a chair? Oh yeah, I forgot this is a dream, so it doesn't have to make sense. The chair submerges in water. Once again, we have a shark completely consumes him. He's in the mouth here. And now we see him back in his car, driving on the highway. Damn this improbable universe. That's the moral of the tale. And this is just almost like a pinup. So I think this was a mini comic. So maybe this was the back cover of the mini comic. That's pretty interesting. That's also very underground to me. Shit, now I don't even know. Is this a continuation? I'm not even sure. Nice drawing nonetheless. Okay, that is so Charles Burns to me. Even though Charles Burns would never be this, like, surreal. That's a really striking image. Oh, I love this one. So I guess this is all technically a story, I guess. Just looks like 3 great pinups to me, but this is amazing. I mean, if I could ever afford a tattoo, that might be the one I go with. That's so cool. This is really nice, the author's notes, and he tells us where everything came from. And, yeah, so I guess this is all one thing, even though it looks like it's just a bunch of pinups. And we have a little tiny bio of Eric Haven. I guess he's an Emmy-nominated producer for the TV show Mythbusters, which I've never seen. I know it's like a popular show, though, so it's kind of weird. I like the fact that he makes enough money that he can just do weird little comics like this. He doesn't have to worry about, doing graphic design or something. And that's it for Compulsive Comics. Really good collection. He's got a bunch of books, so if you like what you saw here, he's he's got a comic called He's got Vague Tales, which I'll be looking at sometime in the future. I'd like to spread things out a little. So, but check out this guy's stuff. Just really funny. This guy cracks me up. And when he's not cracking me up, he's making me just be like, oh, wow, that's such a weird concept or weird idea. He, not the best illustrator in the world, but I don't think he wants to be. I think if it was better illustrated, it wouldn't be as funny. The way he captures that kind of crude Golden Age style makes these funnier to me. So hope you guys like looking at it, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.